Hey everybody, Jessica and Abhishek here, Invisible India Podcast. Namaste.
Hi.
Hey. So, we wanted to talk a little bit because people have been asking about our wedding. How did we go about incorporating traditions? We've released one episode already about some unique things about the wedding, but just on a more personal note, we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary this year, and people ask us a lot of times, how would you, if you could go back, would you change the way you did your wedding? Would you incorporate anything? Would you remove anything? And what are advice that you would give to people who are now getting married, who are Indian, non-Indian couple? So I can start. I think for us, we had we had one ceremony only. We didn't have like an American and then an Indian thing, or like any like different religious things. Like we had one thing where we kind of incorporated the core of who we are into one ceremony and just invited everybody to that. So that doesn't work for everybody, and that's fine. Both of our parents, our families are very gracious and very accepting of us, and so we had a good experience where they gave us a lot of autonomy and allowed us to plan what we wanted to plan. We also got married in Chicago, so we were able to, which none of your relatives live in Chicago. Mine do. So we were able to hire a lot of our own people for the Bharat. We also had our own Pandit, where we had, he's a mentor of ours who we're very close to. So basically, we had a lot of freedom and ability to create a ceremony that expressed us, but also included both of our families and traditions in that.
Right. And ceremonies a lot of times is not about your values as much. Like generally Hindu weddings are not, you just go with the flow, whatever is happening, you go with it. And if you want to include Western elements to it, you could. But I think it's possible to do a blended wedding, but generally Hindu weddings are very set in stone of what they're supposed to be, and including Western elements into it. It can be added on the bookends, like in the beginning or in the end. You cannot include it inside of it, generally. That because it has a process of beginning and ending. So there are rituals that are followed. Like you have to stick with that. You can only do it like at a reception or earlier. That's just the way it is. Like you can't just like tailor make. We were able to do that a little bit, but you cannot tailor make Hindu weddings. Basically, you can reduce the size of it. You can reduce you can
length.
Ask the pandit to length. You can ask the pandit to see if you can take out a few things.
Shortcut puja.
Yeah, but generally you cannot do a whole lot. Otherwise, it will mess with the technicality of how it's designed.
That's right. So that's one thing that we had going for us. I wouldn't change anything about the way that we spent a ton of time on like the content of our wedding. One thing for, since a lot of my family were not as familiar with Indian culture, we had like a program that said these are the different steps that are going to be taking place in the ceremony, and it explained what they were. So people really appreciated that. Handout. So most of your relatives that came have been living in the United States or Canada, so they already kind of like were familiar with some of the steps of like, my dad walked me down the aisle into the mandap, which if you look on our social media, you'll see pictures of our wedding and how we incorporated that. So we also incorporated vows into our Hindu ceremony. So we did the whole I do thing back and forth and exchanged,
It was
rings.
like a blended.
We did incorporate that into our samskar.
Yeah.
So thinking about going back and what would we change? Now, 10 years later, we just watched the video on the day of our anniversary with Abhishek's parents, and just thinking about those memories and what I would change, what I wouldn't change. So I'll give you a second to think about it. For me, I would definitely have not changed how much effort we put into inviting people and thinking about making the family included and comfortable. I think that was really important. I included all my siblings in the bridal party. Um, we included all of your family that came, and it had something for them to participate in, which was really important. We had the haldi ceremony, we had mehendi, where everyone could get mehendi and henna on their hands, even, the bridal party from my side, relatives on both sides. That was really fun, and including everyone, which I wouldn't change anything. Um, One thing I would change was, we didn't really have a lot of control over this, but just like the budget. Um, I sometimes wish I would have spent more money on my wedding, because I know no one ever says that, but I'm going to say that. At that point in our lives, we were newer in our careers, and we just didn't, we're both a little bit minimalistic in some ways, I guess you could say, and a little bit maybe frugal. So sometimes I was like, oh, I don't want to spend for that. I don't want to spend for that. But in looking back, I wish I would have just been like, yeah, like let's just get the best. Like for food and for things for the guest, we didn't skimp. But for things for ourselves, I was like, like, do we really need do I need like the best gown, or do I need to have my makeup done by someone professionally? Like I would have done all those things now looking back.
Like I think we did our best at that time, given the situation, and yeah, so I think it was fine. Trying to think if there's anything else that I would have
You always say,
changed.
oh, it's just one day.
Yeah, it's just one day, right?
Well,
One,
for us, it
one or
was
two
3 days,
three
but yeah.
days, 3 days of wedding. I don't really. I mean, it's important, very important day. The wedding is like doesn't happen um, once in a lifetime thing for most people. So yeah, it was good. It was good. I don't know if I can change a lot of things given the situation that we had. So we did our best, I think.
Yeah,
So
we
yeah.
did. We did. I think people ask a lot about compromise. And what did you compromise for your wedding? What did you this or what did you that? And like, I just want to address that, because people often will write in or comment, um, or just in other circles that I'm in with other people who are with Indian and non-Indian. And this isn't any wedding, but I think there's, because like you were saying, is there are certain things in an Indian wedding which are very set. It's not like, oh, you can just change it around as your personal preference. There are things that are just set, and it's been done that way for thousands of years. And that's part of the beauty of an Indian wedding, but it's hard to sometimes insert your own personal flair, which is important to us Westerners at least. So how would you say, if someone would ask, my Indian uh, soon to be spouse is asking me to do all this stuff, and I don't really want to compromise. Like, what would you say to that person?
Then have two weddings. I think, like that's one option. That's always an option. Why to make it into a one consolidated wedding? Have it two different rituals, two different set of ceremonies, or you can have same one party but two different ceremonies that can be implemented. But usually, like one person has to give in. Generally, it is the boys' side that gives in, but I don't know, maybe not. But girls' side generally is the like I've seen many men just go with the flow, whatever the girls' side wanted. So it depends. It really depends who is from which side. Like if one of them is Indian, did they grow up in America? Do they have family in America? Are they both? Are they getting married? Like for us, it was like we were getting married in a because my I don't have my parents there. I didn't grow up in America, so I didn't have like that grounding there with lots of like my own parents there. So we had our other relatives that joined in,
But
which
your
was a
parents
big
came to the wedding.
came to the wedding.
Yeah.
So they were like a guest to the wedding almost. So we had to organize a lot of it. And then Jessica's parents are there, so that they help with that as well. But what I've seen other people, it really depends upon your situation. Like if you are in getting married in America without your both sides of parents are not present, so then it's a little bit different. But if the girl is from there, grew up there, then generally She and her parents, if she's from Indian background, she will have her own preferences. Her parents will have preferences, and they will have lots of relatives there. So they will just like my cousin had in New York. So yeah, it depends upon how you look at it and what the situation is. You have to look at your situation and go accordingly. We had a different situation. We were able to insert our preferences in it because what we felt was important to us. So that is not very Indian thing to do in that way, because
Mhm.
boys and girls values is generally not inserted into the wedding.
It's not
But
about you.
it's not about you.
Like in American system, it's like it's your day.
Yeah,
In Indian wedding is not your day.
right. You just
it's
show up
it's the
generally.
family's day. So there's a clash of those values, I think, that takes place, and we tried our best to do both. So if you're feeling that clash, then I would just say, like, what are the hills that you're willing to die on? Or maybe that's a bad metaphor, but just what are the things that you like? I really, really want this thing. Find a way that if you can incorporate that somehow. Maybe that means you have two ceremonies. So yeah, I think it's challenging to know how much of your own preferences you want to try to insert and how much you want to go along with the idea that it's not your day and it's not all about you, I guess. And that's a good, I guess, introduction to being married into Indian culture, is the compromises that you may have to make. If you're not willing to make compromises, then a wedding is a great first kind of, not, I don't want to say test because it's not a test, but just a wedding is it's a filter that you have to go through. Like, and sometimes you may not have to go through that much stress ever again in your married life. If you're not planning on having kids, especially.
Yeah, and also like Indian weddings are. It's not necessarily like it does not necessarily express the faith or values of bride and groom. Like, so you don't have to worry about that. Like, oh, if you're atheist or agnostic, or and then you still have a Hindu wedding, it doesn't really mean anything. Like Hindu wedding is one of the things that you do to keep. You might be agnostic or atheist or whatever, but that doesn't mean in the West there is this tendency, like like, oh, I don't want church wedding because I'm this or that, or I don't want Christian elements or whatever it is. But
Mm-hmm.
in Indian culture, even in America, like if whatever your value systems are, you still do Hindu wedding. Like it is not anything. Nobody's asking you to believe in anything necessarily, but it is more of like a marriage, like steps of traditional things that you're doing.
Mm.
So that's something that you have to kind of take into consideration. That is not.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Please send us more questions. Anything else you want to add on that
Oh,
about what we would do differently or not do? Yeah,
wow. It depends upon your circumstances.
yeah. Depends on your circumstances. We can only share a few things about ourselves and from what we remember from 10 years back. And yeah, but I think we really appreciate people sending in their questions and send us more. We love this. This is great. Write to us at jessica@invisibleindiapodcast.com. Check out our website. You can also check us out on social media. We're on Instagram, all of our pictures. We have several pictures coming up on our wedding pictures coming up on the site over the next couple weeks. So feel free to check that out. You can also go to Twitter, Facebook, and of course, you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and several other Indian sites too, JioSaavn, Ghana, etc. So thank you so much for listening. Namaste.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.